Hello and welcome to Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock. On today's show, we are going through UFC 198. There is a new UFC heavyweight champion. We are going to discuss that and some of the other highlights with John Ramdine and lots to come on today's show. Stay tuned. All right, I'm here with John Ramdine. We are coming out of UFC 198, which, what an event, John. It's almost left me speechless. I might, in fact, lose my voice before we end this conversation, but that is why people want to hear from you. We do have a new heavyweight champion in Stipe Miocic. I guess let's assess first the game plan, because Fabricio Werdum, albeit a very short fight, was looking very good early in this fight, and a lot of people have just looked at him just making a key error and eating a fight-ending shot from Stipe Miocic.
Yeah, that's what he said. You can see the post-fight interview, and he's like, he caught me. That's what happens. I would love the opportunity for a rematch because, I fought out of character, whatever the case may be. I just think, maybe just the severity of this show, fighting in front of 45,000 people in your own backyard, many people calling you the greatest heavyweight of all time, and he really rushed in this fight with Stipe Miocic. I thought he had a good strategy going early, attacking the legs, and I thought that was it. Let's just do this for 25 minutes, try to break down Stipe Miocic, but as soon as he had the opportunity, he went straight at the American, trying to gun him down, and it was when Stipe moved back, he was able to plant and move forward and land that right hand. And I think even though he hit Werdum when the fight hit the ground, you got a sense that it was over as soon as he landed that right hand.
Yeah, but you got the sense from Werdum. I mean, his timing was great early in this fight. He was finding his target on Stipe Miocic. And I think we look at heavyweight, John, and I think there's two schools of thought. There's some people who they love to see the dominant champion, that guy who's going to hold that division under his thumb for a long reign. And then you have the heavyweight division where it is hot potato. Yeah. And there's no telling how long Stipe Miocic may have this heavyweight title, because you look at the different matchups, many different styles out there. Alistair Overeem looks to be next up for him possibly, but you also have Cain Velasquez and Travis Browne out there. There are a lot of interesting challenges, but heavyweight is one of those divisions where you can break down things as much as you want, look at the strengths and weaknesses. One punch ends things.
Yeah, it's funny because I think we all had it all laid out, didn't we? We thought that Fabricio, for the most part, I know Robin, he believed that Stipe would win this fight, but I think the masses believed that, Fabricio Werdum in his own backyard, gonna submit this guy. He's gonna retain his title. At UFC 200, Cain Velasquez is gonna beat Travis Browne, and then Fabricio Werdum and Cain Velasquez will have an opportunity to rematch, and that would all fall into place. I think most of us keep forgetting that anything can. It's one of the reasons why people love the sport of mixed martial arts, is because there's so many intangibles. Anything can happen in the sport.
The Brian Barberina rule.
Exactly. Look what happened. The two Americans or two non-Brazilians got victories on this huge card, and you can imagine how many phone calls the UFC matchmakers got going into this fight card in Curitiba. I'm sure everybody wanted to be a part of this card, and which means that all the athletes took this fight and the fight card very, very seriously. So for Barberina to get the victory, and then Stipe in enemy territory, because you saw what Matt Brown, what he had to deal with, and again, he kind of set it up himself, giving everybody flipping people off at the weigh-ins. But he said it was just like an experience I've never had to deal with before. So, I would not be surprised if you're the UFC and the UFC management. I would expect that you want Alistair Overeem to be challenging for the title, considering this is the guy that everybody saw who beat Brock Lesnar. You had this big star that kind of transcended the sport. Overeem smashes him to the body. Granted, Alistair Overeem doesn't look like the same Alistair Overeem that beat Brock Lesnar, but you can sell him.
Ronaldo Jacare Souza ran through Vitor Belfort. I mean, it was, once this got to the ground, it was Jacare's fight, cutting open Vitor Belfort. Jacare looked great in this fight. I think with Vitor Belfort, I think we somewhat see the level he's going to be at. And fighting the top middleweights in the world is probably a step above for Vitor Belfort at this stage of his career. But nonetheless, Jacare, it's him and Yoel Romero, to me, that are your contenders that you're looking at beyond our next title fight.
I actually was impressed with Vitor in many ways in this fight, because we know he has challenges. He can't compete. Today's landscape is very, very different than the one, say a decade ago where Vitor was thriving. And Jacare had an excellent game plan, attacked from the outside, and then when his opportunity was there, get in on those hips. We saw Vitor a number of times escape off the cage into the open playing field, and even when Jacare was driving Vitor up against the cage, you saw because of Vitor's fight IQ, still willing to take risks, throwing a couple of flying knees. But as you pointed out, when Robin and I were talking about the top 10 of the division, when you go number 5 to number 1 or to the champion, it's very different, that group of guys, than from 5 to 10 or 11. So I think Vitor Belfort kind of fits in the lower half, but as you pointed out, Romero, Jacare, Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold. I think that when you talk about that end, Gegard Mousasi probably a part of that list as well. Going to be very difficult for the lower end guys to defeat them.
Chris Cyborg Justino made her UFC debut, only needed 1 minute and 21 seconds, though Leslie Smith believed it should have been a bit longer. However, prior to that finish, Chris Cyborg was lighting Leslie Smith up. I do agree with Leslie Smith's point. I mean, you can look at some of the fights. Patrick Cummins comes to mind. Guys that were given a lot of leeway here before a referee stopped in, and I don't think Leslie Smith was necessarily given that same kind of quality outlook here, which the referee displayed here. Nonetheless, Chris Cyborg Justino just ran through Leslie Smith, and now it's the question of where do you go further? Like, people want to see this woman fighting in the UFC. The question is, who are you going to fill that octagon with?
Yeah, first things first, though. You talk about Cyborg and Leslie Smith, where she feels this fight could have gone on. If you saw Bellator and the other Cyborg against Sadawad, Cyborg, the former husband of Justino, he took 110 unanswered punches. Robin and I were counting, and Sadawad just went to town on this guy. So it's just not everybody's on the same page. That's what it comes down to. The more the sport evolves, we're going to see quality refs be in there, and everybody's going to be on the same page. You do feel for Leslie Smith, but at the same time, you know what was going to come? More punches like that on the ground. So I think when it comes to Cyborg, people were looking at the fact that, well, the 135-pound division is the money division. Well, it wasn't the money division until Ronda Rousey became a star, and then from there, it wasn't the division. It was all about Ronda Rousey. It didn't matter that it was Alexis Davis. It didn't matter that it was Liz Carmouche. It didn't matter that it was Betch Correia across from Ronda Rousey. She was the star. That was what people paid their money for, just like it will be with Cyborg. They don't care who's standing across from her. They want to see this former Shooter Box Academy Brazilian Muay Thai specialist attack and be aggressive with her hands and her feet. That's what people are tuning in for.
I do want to discuss Damian Maia's win over Matt Brown. Man. I mean, this guy is just, how incredible it is Phenomenal. To watch this guy. And in the case of Matt Brown, I mean, you know what Damian Maia is going to do, and he executed it to perfection here, constantly taking down Brown, who was in a defensive position throughout 95% of this fight, and it ended with finally with Maia locking in that rear naked choke at the end of the third. And to me, Damian Maia, he's someone, there's a lot of interesting welterweight fights for him. One that I personally would like to see, because I don't see him necessarily in a title opportunity next, is Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah.
I would love to see Damian Maia looking to take down an elite level wrestler like Johnny Hendricks, and I know it's away from the UFC philosophy. It's not always winners matched with winners. They deviate from that all the time. I think that's one possibility, because a lot of the other key welterweights are now tied up. If Tyron Woodley does get that title fight, and you know that Rory and Thompson are fighting in a few weeks as well.
Oh, I agree. And you're also kind of putting a title challenger or a top contender on the back burner. Damian Maia will still continue to get victories. And again, you get a win over, this win over Johnny Hendricks, for example, Matt Brown, Gunnar Nelson, the list goes on and on. You eventually have to make a case for Damian Maia if there are no fresh, sexy challengers right now for Robbie Lawler. Because as much as we all love Damian Maia, you're trying to sell pay-per-views, and I don't know, does Damian Maia sell pay-per-views?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, Matt Brown had quite the weekend. You outlined at the weigh-ins.
Yeah.
And then it was afterwards,
oh
the former coach of his who came and attacked him at the hotel, and then afterwards, a teammate of Matt Brown's chased him down. There was an arrest made. Yeah. I mean, this was a pretty chaotic weekend for Matt Brown in Brazil.
If you go and see, go online, it's Jay Perillo. He's shooting the video.
Yeah, Jason Perillo shot the aftermath of this, where they had caught the guy.
Reed Harris
is in the middle of it.
Yeah, so it was. It's quite the scene, and he's freaking out, saying that Matt Brown's that he started it. And I think it's an old vendetta that kind of reared its ugly head.
This is the investigation that happened over a year ago involving Matt Brown and this this coach.
Speaking of which, I want to quickly talk about Matt Brown. I think he was working with Jake Shields. You saw Jake Shields rocking a Matt Immortal Brown shirt, which means he understood the game plan of Damian Maia. Bring in top guys to make sure that I do not go to the ground. And what happens? Damian Maia drags this guy to the ground. So even when top athletes train their asses off to ensure something that doesn't happen, and Damian Maia can impose his will and make it happen, that is a special athlete.
How about your man, Antonio Rogerio
Holy
Nogueira?
smokes, turning back the clock. Those left hands from death. Pat Cummins was sitting duck for a full minute, and I can't believe he remained standing after taking a couple of those left hands.
So UFC 198 is in the books. We have a new UFC heavyweight champion, and now we look ahead to Las Vegas, and we will have a preview show of the Fight Night card headlined by Thomas Almeida and Cody Garbrandt coming your way Thursday night, May the 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.